Hi, and welcome to today's Friday webinar. The webinar will be automatically captioned, so if you need captions, use the CC button in Zoom. We will have possibility to answer questions after the presentations. So if you have any questions, please write them in the Q&A. We have much easier to find the questions in the Q&A than if you write them in the chat. So please write them in the Q&A. At the end of this webinar, you will get the links to today's free smart guides. And also we will provide a link to a summary report about this project. So today we will talk about designing consent and how accessible are cookie notices. So we'll explore this somewhat nerdy subject. We did it at XCon, but this is a shortened version. So if you want a more in-depth version, you can catch the XCon version, which was a 1 hour long. So how accessible are cookie banners? I'm Malin Hammarberg, and I'm a senior UX designer and accessibility specialist, and I'm here with my brilliant friend and colleague, Sara Källstrand. She's a research strategist, and we're both working, of course, at Funka Foundation. And let's dive into the subject. So, have you ever been confused by a cookie banner? Well, you're not alone. Many people struggle with them, and there is a cookie banner jungle out there. There is no two cookie banners that are the same. So brace yourself, because we're about to explore a wide variety of cookie banners. So cookie banners comes in all shapes and sizes. Some are has barely any text and are very tiny in the corner of your browser. Others have a lot of text and almost cover the entire window, so you can't hardly see what's behind. Some demand payment just to reject the cookies, while others very nicely offers do not sell or share many information. Some stretch across the entire screen and are sticking to the bottom. Others stick to the side, either right or the left side. Some give you a few choices. Some give you ambiguous choices, like this one with accept all and accept necessary. Some give you no choices at all, only a button to close it down. And some of them give us an overwhelming a lot of choices, like this one. We have several choices, but the most fun thing, I think, is that we have the possibility to enlarge it so it covers the entire screen. The ability to download it, or even the ability to print it. So we can print it out, frame it, and put it on the wall for future references. And what made us really stop and think about this is that the cookie banner is like the doorway to the website. So but the website owners tend to make this doorway impossible to find, or really hard to open, or really hard to pass through and understand what you bring with you, what you share with the website owners. And we thought this was kind of funny, because it's not only making us think a lot when we go to a website, it sometimes stops us with this guard saying, please pay us or hand over all your personal data. But the cookie banner is actually there for a good reason. So first is the legal requirement, and different regions have different laws. In EU, we have the GDPR and the e-privacy directive. In California, we have the CPRA. In Canada, I'm not sure if it's pronounced like this, but I like to say PIPEDA, so I will continue to do that. And in Brazil, we'll have the LGPD. And we're not here to debate the law, but these regulations exist for a reason, to give the user control over their own data. So the user perspective is really nice here, where we offer the control for the user to decide, what do I want to share and what do I want to keep private? And And what we noticed when we looked into this is that cookies are complicated for everyone. In a survey, about 40% answered that they thought cookie was complicated. But when we looked at the people with and that acknowledged having a disability, every other person said that they found cookie banners complicated. So they are even more complicated for users with to handle for users with disabilities. So Sarah, sorry, what did we do about this?
So at the Funka Foundation, whenever we see a problem, we think this is a brilliant opportunity to do a project. So what we did in this instance was that we teamed up with the Norwegian Computing Center to get funding from the Norwegian Directorate of Children, Youth and Family Affairs, Bufdir, to investigate the accessibility of cookies and how people with various abilities use and perceive cookies. And in this research project, we looked at it from various angles, doing a literature review of different types of cookies. And we also looked at audits, how the different cookie banners have. Could you go back to the problem project? So there was a question in the chat if I could repeat, and I don't know from where, so I'm just going to continue from where I am, I think. So in this project, we looked at it from a literature review point of view, looking at what kind of different cookies exist. We did evaluation, expert audits from both a technical and cognitive point of view. We also did user research consisting both of a survey and also of usability tests with a panel of persons with various abilities. And what we saw when we looked at the accessibility was that we needed to divide it into two different aspects. So accessibility here is both about accessing information and understanding the information. And this may seem obvious, but in terms of looking specifically at cookies, the cookie is there for a reason, and it's to help you make an informed choice so that you stay in control of your own data, which means that just accessing the information in the cookie is not enough. You also need to understand it so that you can make this informed choice and stay in control. And we found a lot of different barriers, both in accessing information and in understanding. And Malin will first describe the barriers that we saw when accessing information.
So the cookie banner is often treated like a neglected side project rather than an essential part of the user experience. And as a result, there's where we find some of the worst accessibility issues, even if the website otherwise is well designed. So what main challenges did we find that user was facing when they tried to access the cookies? Well, it was diverting designs. So there's no standard designs. All looks different, as I showed you in the cookie banner jungle. Banners vary widely in where they are placed, how they look, the wording inside them, the number of choices, this making them hard to notice and recognize. And the user can never kind of relax and know what to do. They always need to relearn. And sometimes they blend into, well, I will look about on an example about that later on. They usually have unclear navigation and structures. Many banners lack clear layout, proper headings. Most of them do not have a heading at all. We found illogical focus order, and even getting to the banner with the keyboard turned out to be hard at times. We had confusing states, and the absence of a simple reject all options made decision-making harder than it needed to be. Plus, many aren't fully compatible with keyboard navigation or assistive technology. We also found that they work really bad in responsive. So when a user zooms in, they usually lose information. They might even lose some of the choices. The same thing happens when the font size is increased. So this makes the cookie banner really unusable for some users. Then we also found bad colors and contrast located inside the cookie banner. So even if the rest of the site had good contrast, since they use plugins a lot of time, a third party, the colors and contrast could be bad in the cookie banner. So instead of informing us, supporting an informed choice, cookie banners often felt like a frustrating obstacle course. And what happens when users get frustrated? Well, they will leave the site. So we found so many different placements. We found them in the headers, in the footers, as a centered pop-up, which actually is one of the better places because they were the most recognizable. We find them located on the left side or on the right side, or very small in the corner, in one of the small corners in the bottom or one of the corners in the top. These were the ones that was the hardest to find. But with that said, we also find really large banners that covered 1/3 of the screen, like in this example. But the cookie banner, this was the cookie banner that the participant had the hardest time to find because it kind of melted into the background. And even if they were actively looking for it, they were scrolling up and down, and this covering 1/3 of the screen still didn't notice it. So this is kind of a banner blindness where they are technically there, but they are hidden in plain view. What we noticed was that screen reader users, the situation was even trickier. A lot of time they weren't even made aware of that there were a cookie banner there. Even if the cookie banner covered the entire screen, they didn't get any information about it and unknowingly browsed underneath the cookie banner. So visually it might be the first thing we see, but in the code it's often buried further down and makes it invisible to assistive technology. And one of the users shared, sometimes I notice the site isn't working as expected. Only then do I start looking for the cookies. So this kind of creates a disproportionate barrier. And even when users realize they need to find the banner, it's not always that easy because as I said, the cookie banners lack headings. So the common technique for a screen reader user to list all the headings, they won't find it in the heading structure. And then they need to try to find some wording, but since it's not standardized, that's turned out to be really hard as well. We also found several issues with navigation and structure. So one is the heading markup, as I already mentioned. Then we had the reading order. So the logical reading can be disrupted, which makes it challenging to navigate to the banner and navigate inside the banner using another input device or a keyboard. Also, some banners didn't support the keyboard navigation altogether, make it really tricky because not all choices might be accessible or not all accordions was possible to expand to read the content inside. We also saw problems with unclear states, and I will show one example about this, and something we call dead ends, where the user ended up in a place where they weren't sure what alternative was the right way to go. And we have this all summed up in one example. So this is an example of a cookie banner. The user was asked to reject all cookies, and they got into cookie settings. The necessary cookies is pre-checked. The checkbox kind of is very dark frame. It doesn't look disabled, but the check mark itself is light gray. So you kind of can maybe think it's disabled. But this made a lot of frustration for users because they thought they were able to uncheck this. When they noticed they couldn't, then they ended up asking, what am I supposed to do now? So the states were unclear, and now they had 3 options. One button was called use recommended cookies. But what was recommended cookies? Was it the choices that were in right now, or was it another choice? They weren't sure. Then they had save selected, but they hadn't changed anything. So were they supposed to click save selected? And the third option they had was the close button in the top corner. So some users clicked that, ending up with not doing anything because and they hadn't made a choice when they used the close button. So this is kind of something we saw several times, that the user didn't get the support to do the right choice. And Sarah, we saw a lot about this with understanding in the text as well, right?
Yeah, so already in the navigation, it turns out to be difficult to understand what you're supposed to do. And then the text on the cookie doesn't always make it easier. So in terms of information on the cookie, we saw several barriers to understanding. There could be too much information or too little information, or the information is unclear. And starting with too much information, there are several variants of this. There could be a lot of text to go through, which means that it's just a mass of text, which could be off-putting for a lot of persons from the beginning, and just think that it's too much and they are overwhelmed and want to leave the site straight away. If you also start to read the information, it could be difficult to keep the thread. What's actually important here? What information do I really need to be able to make the choice? It's a very cognitively challenging situation where you as a user has to sort out which parts of the information is actually important for you to do the task and which is just there as a fill out. And then, or to give additional explanations. If you go back to the too much information, there could also be an issue of having too many different choices. So if you have more than 3 clear choices, accept, reject, and make preferences, then it can be very difficult to understand what kind of choices do I really need to do. Is everything really necessary? What can I do to just stay in control of my data and move on? So you had to read and understand all of the different choices, which also can mean that you get lost in the process. And in the worst case, there is the added burden of both a wall of text to go through and a series of choices. And we saw this very clearly in the user testing, where a lot of users said that that's too much information with really long and difficult info and a lot of words. And some of the persons would have just closed the websites and gone to another, well, just perhaps turn the computer off and gone doing something different if it hadn't been in the situation where they had an incentive to finalize the usability test together with us. On the other hand, too little information can also be an issue. For example, if you have a statement saying that we use cookies to optimize our website and our service, that's a statement. It doesn't actually say that, hey, you have the option here, you can make a choice. So if you just take the text as it is, there is no connection between we use cookies to optimize our website and service, and then the 3 buttons, accept, deny, and preferences. You leave a gap here for the user to fill in the gap, and it leaves open a lot of possibilities of interpretation and also puts a lot of confusion in the hand of the user. What happens with accept? What exactly am I accepting? Am I accepting the statement that they use cookies? Okay, good for them, but what does it have to do with me? Deny, what am I denying? I'm denying the optimization, am I denying the service? And preferences, anything, it could mean just anything if there is no clear link between the options you give to the user and the text. So both too little information and too much information is a problem. So what do you do? Is there an optimal number of words, or what kind of cookie should you do? How can you just give just enough information, not to overwhelm the user and not to leave it wondering what it's supposed to do? But what we found in the usability tests is that a good way is to give options so that you have the possibility to get more information in case you need it. One example is that you could have a collapsed element where you give more information, either explanations of complicated terms, or perhaps more information about the types of cookies, the types of data that you collect. but you don't have to show it for all the users at once. There is the option of getting more information for the persons who need it. And the third type of confusion when it comes to information is just simply that it's unclear. In some of the cookies, we saw that the wording for accept and deny was similar. So for example, accept all cookies and accept necessary cookies. Well, that accept necessary cookies actually means denying the other cookies, but it says accept. So for a user just reads it briefly, because we're all busy people, we want to get to the website as soon as possible. Accept, what is that? Then you have to again do the job as a user of trying to understand and trying to figure out what did the website owner actually mean? What do you need to do here? There's a lot of different unclear terms as well, and a lot of complicated way of saying things. So instead of having a convoluted sentence like, please make your preferences apparent to us, or something equally long and complicated, just state, make a choice. There are a lot of legal and technical terms involved, but that could be explained in a separate element. And also sometimes a lot of people have the tendency to just use technical terms where there are other ways of saying the same things in plain language. And this is also the reason why there is so much lack of standardized text around cookies, so many different variants of it. Just a few versions of how you can reject cookies are only essential, decline additional, accept essential, no thanks, deny, no, I do not agree, just necessary, reject optional, use necessary, cookies only, do not consent. And I think we saw at least a dozen more variants of this in the different cookies, which means that for the user, they have to stop and think every time, what does this actually mean? Which causes confusion and also a sense of insecurity. So please use standardized text. And all of these things that we've seen making cookie choices really difficult. And we saw that in the user survey we did, that 48% of all users find it difficult to make choices in cookies. And 65% of users with a disability find it difficult. So that's 2 out of 3 persons with disabilities. But all is not lost. Now Malin is going to show us how we can do to make cookies that feel secure and easy to work with.
So the site owners need to start building trust. And we build trust when we are transparent. So if the website owners would just be transparent with information and what data they collect and why they collect the data, a lot more user would feel secure about sharing the cookies. Because when we trust someone, and we saw that, people said it as well, when I trust the website owner, I actually will share my data. We also believe a lot in standardized options and placements, because it would be so much easier for the end user if at least it was possible to find the heading in the heading structure for users with screen readers, or that it was placed in a similar way. So if you have a visual impairment, you would easily find it, no matter if you can't see the cookie banner at all, or if you have partial eye loss and need to look, you know where you need to look to find it. We also saw some things we think you can do about accessing and understanding information. So make it immediately visible, as I just said. It's very important. The users need to be able to be allowed to at least take the choice, whatever choice they want to do. And it would make it much more better if we actually added a heading to that cookie banner, so you can find it in the heading structure. And if you structure the cookie banner more logically, so the information is easy to find. And as Sarah said, showing just enough information. So maybe linking to or having accordions that you can pull out to get more information if needed. So make them concise but informative. Also avoid jargon, and if you use very technical or very legal language, offer explanations so that user can feel secure that they understand everything. They don't feel like you are trying to cheat them into a choice. And most important, provide 3 clear choices: accept, reject, and customize. So the user can choose what cookies they are accepting, if they're accepting all, or if they can reject as many as possible. So let's take some questions. Sorry, I will open some. We have one that asked, this might come up later during the webinar, but which cookie consent add-on do you recommend when it comes to accessibility? Is there a clear winner out there within all the cookies that are out there? We saw several third-party cookie providers, and we tested some of them. We found accessibility issues on all of them. So I think if the website owners kind of start setting demands on those third-party providers and say that it needs to be accessible, then it would probably become better. But we didn't, what I can remember, found any one of them, the third-party ones, that were completely accessible. Right, Sarah?
I think they were actually more complicated than others. Usually they have much too many different options and additional text compared to other cookie notices. But what we can say about how to bake the perfect cookie, we did do a checklist that is in the report. And I think we have put the links in the chat,
yeah, or Stefan will do it very soon.
Stefan will do it. Yeah.
On the Norwegian Text Administration, yep, you saw what page, even if I try to anonymize it, isn't the input disabled equal to disabled sufficient to communicate the cookie checkbox? Okay, so the question is that the checkbox was set as disabled. Isn't that enough? It's enough for users who use assistive technology like a screen reader, because they will get that information, but visually, the users who tested it got really confused and thought they could uncheck that because they felt like it was active, but they got frustrated trying to click it several times, saying this does not work. So yeah, I can't remember exactly how it looked technically, but that was a difference we saw. Sometimes it was made technically, but it didn't visually look the same, and then it was really hard for the users. Next question, should you put a focus lock on a cookie banner until the user dismisses it, or it's so you don't violate focus obscured success by accessing the site behind the banner? I think it depends. If the cookie banner is one of those that cover the most of the site, then of course and you can't see the thing behind, then you should be locked into the cookie banner, so you can do that choice first before you go to the site behind. But we also found in the research that the user needs to be able to see what site is behind, so they can take an informed choice if they want to continue surfing on that site before they answer the cookies, if that makes sense. Sarah, do you have anything else on that one?
No, I don't. I think it covered it. Yeah.
Okay. And this one I think is for you. Any recommendation in terms of standardized text for options?
I think it's the 3 ones that we saw in the last slide. So accept cookies, reject optional cookies, and customize. So it's really important to have the distinction between accept and reject. so that the users do not think that the only option is to accept, whether it's accepting necessary or accepting everything.
Yeah. And how will third-party cookies handling affect play with the EAA? Will probably all sites fail just because this cookie handling? A short answer, we hopefully think it will become better, since EAA say you are also responsible for your third-party solutions. So hopefully there will be a lot of requirements on those third-party cookie providers, and those cookie banners will become better. I think that was about what we, if you don't see a question you really love among answers, I will just move on to thank you for your interest. We love this. It's so fun to share with you guys. And secondly, our next webinar will be on another project we have done during the entire last year, a bit into this year, expertise based on personal experience. So this is a prolonged Friday webinar that's 1 hour long on the 21st of March. In this project, funded by the Interreg Central Baltic, and we have trained persons with disabilities in web accessibility based on their lived experience. The training included practical exercises where participants tested and reported on issues found on public sector websites. So we share that project and the result and some of the pilot commentary around that. I hope you will join, and Stefan will send a link in the chat inviting you to register for that event. Thank you so much for listening. And we have so much to talk about when it comes to cookies, so we can sit there for hours, but we only had 1.5 hours today. I hope you got something out of it, and we are so glad that you joined us this Friday and listened to us. Thank you so much.